All righty, we're going to let everyone come in and then we'll get started shortly. Okay, we're going to get started shortly and then, yeah. So we'll just wait one more minute for everyone to come in.
Man, anybody else?
Okay. Good evening to folks in Central Time, Eastern Time, Pacific Time. Thank you so much for joining my webinar this evening on how I got my ACT score from a 16 to a 32. Just make sure everyone's gotten in. Okay. So, and I'm excited to share my tips and tricks on how to get your scores up that high as well. Okay, so the agenda for this webinar, I will share my own story of how I got my ACT score up, and I will bust ACT myths, and then I'll share general test taking strategies, my top 10 test taking tips that you can actually apply to your studying. And I'll share information about Top Tutors for Us, that's hosting this webinar this evening, Q&A. And if you stay until the end, I will raffle off a free session with Top Tutors for Us. So this is a free one-on-one session with a top tutor. And so you'll get access to our platform and then also to work with our amazing top tutor. So, and that'll be a one-on-one session. Okay. So real briefly, who am I? I'm originally from New Orleans. I'm based in St. Louis. I was one of those students that had a 4.0 GPA. I was a varsity athlete, did a ton of leadership roles. So I essentially had it all. What I didn't have was a good ACT score. My score in after my sophomore year was a 16. So I was really taken aback by like how could I be so strong in the classroom, but do so poorly on standardized test on this standardized test. So I took a leap of faith, and I told my parents I wanted to leave my all girls private school and homeschool myself. And they they were like, "Wait, are you going crazy, Angelica? Why would you want to do something like that?" But I like, "No, I want to do this." And I did. So, essentially, I homeschooled myself my 11th grade year, and I got my score up by 16 points, and that was just in 7 months. And what I realized why I got my score up was so my strategy, I had like a bunch of ACT tests. I categorized these exams and realized that the ACT was testing on the same concepts for every single test. So I had this spreadsheet that pinpointed the important concepts I needed to know. And with those important concepts, I then realized the formulas I needed to apply when I see those types of questions. So I almost like reverse engineered the test. And that got my score up to a 32. And with a 32, I was then offered over $1.5 million in college scholarships. So if you're wondering, if you're a parent on this webinar, you're wondering, how can I afford college? Like, how can I get scholarship money for my child? College is just so expensive. It's going up every single year. My biggest advice is increasing your test score because that's actually guaranteed money that your child can get with a higher ACT. Like in the state that I'm from, Louisiana, every time a student that gets above a 20 gets a baseline scholarship for baseline state scholarship money. If they get over a 20, like every point they get, a student gets more and more scholarship money. So, yeah. I then went to WashU for undergrad and grad school. Um, So shout out to anyone who's been there. And I was in the business school and engineering school and did my master's in computer science. All right, so I'm just going to break down a few scholarships that I received so you guys can write this down for your own personal use. And I will have a scholarship webinar a few weeks from now where I'll really go into depth about how you can maximize your scholarship portfolio. So these are some of the scholarships I received. So feel free to screenshot this page. I was went to WashU, so received the full John it's a name scholarship called John B. Irvin. Received the Chancellor Scholarship from Vanderbilt, Chancellor Scholarship from Tulane. So majority of my money came from universities, and that's where the majority of your money will come from is universities. So yes, I think there's a lot of talk about doing all these outside scholarship and where you can get like $2,000, 5,000, 10,000. Don't get me wrong, that's still good money. But if you're really trying to get like a $50,000 scholarship, you got to look to the university for this. And so you want to be competitive in that pool of applications. So to make yourself the most competitive, you need a good test score. And I'm going to discuss this in a bit about merit-based scholarships. Test scores being needed for these merit-based scholarships. All right. So, and just know that at the end, I will answer Q&A. So, if you have questions, just I see a message, just I will answer them at the end. So, before I jump into like test taking strategies and all about for the ACT, I first want to just briefly just explain what is the ACT, you know, excuse me, what is the ACT? It's a standardized test used for college admissions, merit-based scholarships, and sometimes even job applications, where sometimes even request for your ACT score. So this test is widely used, and it measures, there's been some controversy about the ACT, your academic readiness, and it tests in English, math, reading, and science. So if you guys been keeping up with the ACT, all this, standardized tests, everything that's been going on, you probably heard that the ACT, like the SAT, will be changing its format starting this September. So, excuse me. For example, the English section, it was originally 70. The test has fewer questions now. So as you can see, the English, it's going from 75 questions to 50 questions. Reading, it's going from 40 questions to 36 questions. Math also goes down from 60 questions to 45 questions. The science section remain the same, but you get more time per question. Now, this is a great thing that you have fewer questions, but also keep in mind that means each question will be worth more points. So, getting a question wrong penalizes your score more. Okay. Um, and I also want to mention that the science section is optional along with the writing section. So, the writing section has always been optional. The science section is optional as well. So my recommendation, if you're trying to decide, if any parents on here trying to decide whether my child should take the science section or should not take the science section, I always say that it depends on if your child is trying to go into STEM or to like an engineering school. So if they're trying to go to a competitive engineering school or some kind of engineering program, yes, then you want to take this. Then you want your child to take the science and do really well on it. Or if you're someone who just does naturally well on the science section and the science section actually increases your score, then it's a good idea to keep the science test. So don't yeah. And then also know that the new format of the ACT is they're offering a digital option. So you either can take it on paper or digitally. So for all my folks who love stuff on the computer, I think that's a great option for you. For my paper people, you can just continue taking it with on paper. Excuse me. So now I'm going to just break down myths versus fact. Okay. So, first myth, I have straight A's. I don't need to study for the ACT. Okay. I know that firsthand. You do have to study for the ACT. I had straight A's, and I did not do well initially on the ACT. Like, this is a test you have to study for. Um, Now we do see obviously a correlation between students who take more AP classes, higher level classes. Yes, those students typically do better on standardized tests than students taking, traditional regular classes. But the thing is, the ACT is just, and this is also for the SAT, those tests are just very different than what a student sees in the classroom. And even the way that they ask students to apply concepts is very different. So your child might understand, equations and do really well on the equation tests in the classroom, but the way the ACT asks about equations, that might kind of trick them up. So they might get those questions wrong. So they have to actually be able to, they have to practice a lot with ACT questions. And plus, the ACT is about speed. Typically, most questions you have under a minute. So that makes it very challenging to get through everything. And then plus, there's just more pressure around the test. So, yes, you do need to study. Second myth, it will be easy to increase my ACT score. Okay, myth. It is very, very challenging to increase your ACT score. Just some context, like, and there's been studies on this also, but if a student just takes the ACT over and over again without doing any practice, they'll just keep getting the same score over and over again. So if we have any counselors on here, you probably have seen it where like you have your student take the ACT once and then they take it again. And you're like, wait, how did they get the same score? Or how did they go down? Yeah, it's really hard to increase your ACT score. It's you have to like understand the test and there's strategies involved to actually increasing a student's test score. And I also want to mention that this fact that going up 3 points, like that might sound like, okay, yeah, I can go up 3 points, but going up 3 points on the ACT, like going from a 21 to a 24, that means you have to get an additional 10 to 15 questions right per section. So yeah, that sounds, just to put that in context. Okay. Another myth if I go to a test optional university, I don't need a I don't need like to send my ACT scores. Like I don't need a strong ACT score. Um that is okay, that's a myth, but it's also somewhat misleading. Um and that's because though you like a student might get into a university that's test optional. So for everyone that's on here, test optional universities means that the student has the choice whether they want to submit their ACT to the university or not. And so my general advice is if your score is above the school's average, definitely submit it. If it's below, especially well below, it's not going to work in your favor to submit it. Now, ACT scores are used for merit-based scholarships. So, for example, like I said, from Louisiana, and to get state scholarship, a student must score a minimum of a 20. And to get the most state scholarship money, a student must get over a 27 on so yeah, a student might get into the university, but they won't get any money. So yeah. ACT is best is, it's if you're trying to max out your financial aid packet, getting higher scores will always help in that instance. So, alrighty. So we're moving right along. Now I'm just going to share some of my top general test taking strategies for the ACT. These are actual strategies you can apply in your own um, studying. So as I mentioned, my personal story with going up, increasing my score, just know that I um, I realized I had skill gaps. So I think there are a lot of there are a lot of ACT programs and test prep programs that teach students about strategies. Yes, those are very important, but if a student has skill gaps in algebra, in English, trying to understand those strategies is very challenging. So what I did was build up my skills, master algebra, master, traditional English, then apply strategies to help me with speed. So I kind of went a little backwards. Well, not really backwards, but actually started with the foundation, then went to strategies. Okay. Alrighty. So my top 10 tips. So this is super important. Creating a study schedule. Like, this is not, the ACT is not a test that you can just prepare the week before or the night before. Like, you have to be intentional. And the earlier you start, the better. The great thing about the ACT is once you get your score, like your ideal score, you no longer have to take it. And let's say you're a sophomore and you get a 32, and that's high enough for the university you want to attend. You can stop studying for the ACT at that point. Or if you're a junior and you get a 32, you can stop studying at that point. So it's best to try to start early, like in eighth, ninth grade, studying for the ACT. Get your ideal score so you'll be well prepared by senior year. I run a test prep platform, so I know we have a lot of seniors who start preparing senior year, and it's just very stressful. So I'm glad you guys are in this call to learn these strategies. Okay, and last on the previous slide, just also want to mention my general advice is to do a little bit every night. So what we tell our students is 30 minutes of power. So 30 minutes every night you want to put towards ACT practice, even if it's just doing like 5 questions. That goes a long way. So strategy number 2, don't leave any questions blank. Why? Because you don't get any points off for, on the ACT. You only build up your score. So, yeah. So process of elimination, that's your best friend. There are students that I've talked with where they will say, I chose this answer because it looked right. If you're a student on this call and you're just guessing on the ACT, just know you're going to get a low score. Like you can you can use process of elimination to eliminate obviously wrong answer choices, but don't just like look at the answer choice and choose it because it looks right. There's always a reasoning behind every answer. Okay. And so what I recommend is that when you are looking at a specific ACT question, that you think about, okay, what is this question testing me on? If it's an English question, um, and I can pull up, an example, um, and let's say it's asking about, you know, commas, then recall all the comma rules. So let me actually show you all some examples. It's always nice to have real examples rather than me just talk at you with a bunch of strategies. So pulling up a real ACT test. All right. So this is an actual ACT test. And the passage is called Hair Raising Problems. So I'll just read this one quickly. So, why is it that we are so completely obsessive with the hair on our heads? This one, so just trust your ear. And obviously, this one, the best answer choice would be obsessed. Why is it that we are so completely obsessed? And this question, so if I was really taking this, I would think of, this is testing us on, tenses, right? And so the best one to choose would be B. Now, on to the second question. I typically skim the parts where it doesn't have an underline to it. So this is a time test. So you can't read like you have to skim some parts of it. So I would go down here and be like, someone is willing to pay the money to do it. All right, pay the money. That sounds really good. But I'm looking at the other answer choices and I see paying money, or have paid. So the correct answer would be G. Hopefully you guys thought about, knew it was G. And that's because the ACT wants the most concise answer choice. So um the ACT abhors anything that's wordy, redundant, so they want answer choices that are straight to the point, which makes sense because I'm sure in your writing classes, your English teachers probably said, okay, is there a way for you to write this sentence or this paragraph that's more concise? Less is more. Okay. Um, and let's see. So looking at number 4, I'm just going to skip number 3. This will be our last one for this example, but both men and women cringe at the sight of each gray hair. Um, comma. So teenagers enjoy weekly experiments with magenta dyes, spikes, and tangerine streaks. So for this one, it doesn't like we know. Would you guys agree that this first part is a complete sentence, right? So it has a subject, both, and it has a verb, cringe. Okay. And then the second part also has a subject and a verb. So we essentially have 2 complete sentences. And to combine 2 complete sentences in one sentence, can we use the word however? No. However is not a conjunction. So yeah, we can cancel that out. So we can use a comma. That's perfect, but we can't use the transition word however, because that would make it a run-on sentence. Now I'm just looking at, okay, what's the best conjunction for this sentence? And the best one is and. Okay, so it's 2 complete thoughts. So yeah, and will be the answer. All right. So just notice like when you're going through the questions on the ACT, that you are asking yourself, what are they testing me on? And then think about the concepts you need to apply. Okay, so that works for every single type of question. So even for the math section, oops, let me kind of scroll down a little bit to the math. Um, so even for like, if you're looking at the math section, Shannon walked this many miles, 1 2/3 miles on Wednesday, and 2 3/5 miles on Thursday. What was the total distance in miles Shannon walked during those 2 days? Okay, so we need to add mixed numbers. Okay, so this question, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to like do the whole entire math. I'm just going to identify, like, show you how to identify problems. So this question is on adding mixed numbers. Okay. Um, and so you need to know the process to do that. This question is on multiplying exponents. Okay, so you need to know all your exponent rules. This question, I've done this test before, that's why I'm able to do it. But this question is on, this one was on, this is just a word problem asking about like how much salary they make per day. So this is really not the best one here. This fourth question is on, averages. Like you have to know the formula for average. So notice I'll do this for each question. And the math portion, for those who've taken the ACT before, goes from easy to hard. Okay, so it starts off with pre-algebra, then they work their way to trig and pre-calculus. So the bulk of the questions, so the math section goes through pre-algebra, algebra 1, algebra 2, geometry, and trig. The bulk of the test, roughly 85% of the test for math is algebra. So you just have to be really good at algebra to do really well on the math section. But just notice how I literally can go through each question and just write out like what concept are they testing me on this specific question. So this question is a geometry question, and I need to know the formula for area of a circle and area of a square. Okay, so I need to, and area of a square. Okay, a square, or something like that. Okay, so I can keep going on and on and on and doing that exact same thing. So students that know formulas and just know how to apply them, they do really well on the ACT. So you have to have like this material mastered, because you get less than a minute per question. So you just don't have time to like sit there and be pondering on how to do stuff. So, um, yeah. Okay, let me go to the next strategy. And yeah, so process of elimination is your best friend. The great part about the ACT is that all the questions are multiple choice. Okay, so one of those questions is right. Alrighty, so recognizing patterns on the ACT. I pretty much just went through that. I didn't do the reading and science part, but um, what I love about the ACT are a few things. So one, the test is multiple choice, so one of those answers is right. Two, every test is the same. So every test, they're going to ask you about commas, run-on sentences, modifiers, dangling modifiers, misplaced modifiers. They'll have rhetorical questions, and I can do the same thing for math. Like every test is the same. So if you have, formula sheet where you can understand those concepts, you'll do really well on the test. And you're a careful reader, you'll do well on the test. But anyway, practice makes perfect. Familiarize yourself with these types of questions. Alrighty, let's keep going. So avoid misreading on the ACT. This is super important, especially with this new format of the ACT. So every question is going to be worth more points. So if you miss a question, that like the difference between a 20 and a 25 is like, I mean, if you're constantly misreading questions, you're going to be, it's going to, keep bringing your score down and down. So, um, it's so important that you annotate, like underline words that are in all caps, circle those, words that are, if it says the word like not. And what I always tell my students is whichever answer you put down, do a mental, a quick mental check to be like, all right, this answer I selected, it answers the question. Like, and I can actually show you an example, especially in reading, where your answer must be supported, must have evidence in the passage. If it doesn't, then it's not the right answer. Okay. So, and this is actually most important for like the reading section. We don't have to like read the whole thing, but essentially, I mean, I always recommend starting with the question because it's just easier to, so you know what you're looking for. And so for this question, it's a member of the cruise ship. And so I'm just gonna give it to you because um it starts using, if you read the passage, it starts using the word like I and my friends, we. So that's evidence in the passage that supports this answer choice. Okay. So same thing down here. Like question number, 8. I'm just gonna give you the, just say the answer because we don't have time to sit there and read the whole passage. It'll be resign tolerance because there's actual evidence in the passage that mentions that so the main character is Marlowe, that his crew members just tolerated his jokes. So it's the supporting evidence is here for question number 8. So you have to do like, if you can't find the specific evidence for your answer, then your answer is not right. Okay. And my advice for vocab questions, even if you like know the vocab, like placid generally means calm, even if you know that, still go back and reread that word to get the context, because sometimes like the context can change the meaning of the word. So where like the most common definition is not the one that's like used. So yeah. Alrighty, let's keep going. Hopefully that's making sense. Yeah, misreading cost is like is very costly, and I see like I work with over 1,000 students on the ACT. So I've hosted classes, done individual sessions, and really, and where a lot of students miss questions is not because they don't know the concept, it's just because they are misreading. So um be very careful. And um yeah. So next strategy, pacing. So this is super crucial. You don't want to waste all your time on one question. Your goal is to get as many questions correct as possible. As I mentioned earlier, you're only building up your score. And you don't get any questions for, any penalties for wrong answer choices. Now, I do want to share this stat that this is what a lot of students don't know. There is this common misconception that a student needs to get through the entire test to score really well. I'm here to tell you that that is not true. You can get us 25. Like a 25, you tell somebody, if you tell most colleges, if you tell them you got a 25, that's a very strong score. And that'll get you plenty of scholarship money. So getting a 25 actually means you just need to get 70% of the questions correct. Did anybody know that? that you only need to get 70% of the questions correct to get a 25? Okay, so most students don't know that, so they like rush through the entire test and they don't give themselves a lot of time per question. So and that actually makes them make a lot of small mistakes, which leads to low test scores. So I actually recommend shooting for about like getting through, 85 or 90% of the test, but getting a lot of questions right. So, just figure out a way how you can get, 70% of the questions right. So let's say you might just need to get through like 85% of the test and or 90% of the test. And then, so you have, 20% of the questions you can miss, but you're getting a lot, you're getting at least 70% right. So you're guaranteeing yourself a 25. Okay. All right. So next strategy, answering easy, medium questions first. Um, my third reason why I really love the ACT, and this is very different from your classes, is easy. Every question is worth the same amount of points. Easy questions are worth the same amount as hard questions. Typically in your classes, your hard questions, you will get more points, right? And your easy questions, getting the easy questions right, you'll get, fewer points. But in the ACT, every question is treated equal. So, with that in mind, a strategy we can pull from that is answering the easy and medium questions first. Do not waste time on hard questions. It's just, there's like no benefit. And I see that all the time that students sit there and like they spend 2, 3 minutes on a hard question when they could just skip that question and go to the easy question and get, 2 or 3 of those right. So, and then go back to the hard questions once you have done all easy, medium. So, and then it's important to know like being able to understand the difficult, like um the types of questions, like being able to identify like what questions are easy, what questions are hard. Um, Now I have a lot more strategy on that, but just for the sake of time, and because this is like a demo, I'm just gonna keep going. So context clues, just your best friend. Um, and this is especially very important for reading and English questions that are rhetorical. Those rhetorical questions that you need the context, because that will give you the hint for um the actual answer. So let's see if I can kind of share the English passage again and just kind of show you like, identify, using context clues to help you with the answer. Um, Okay, so after every English passage, so there are 5 English passages, each 15 questions long. After every English passage, there'll always be like some rhetorical questions. So in this case, like the writer's considering deleting the preceding sentence, which will be this. If the sentence was deleted, the essay would primarily lose. I know you guys didn't read the whole passage, but I did. Um, and the answer is the narrator's ability to put her situation into perspective. And the reason why I was able to like come to that answer was because I did, you have to get like while you are reading, especially the questions where they're asking you about grammar, you want to also make sure you're keeping the story in mind. So because they will ask you about like the overall picture of the story at the end. So um, yeah. And also, typically you'll see questions like this where it'll be like yes or no. My advice is answering yes or no in your head, eliminating those answer choices. Then so if you read this and the answer and you're like, wait, that's a definite no, then you only need to read 2 answer choices. Right? So you don't need to read the last 2 answer choices. So and vice versa. If you read this question and it's like you're answering no, don't read the first two answer choices, just read the no answer choices. Alrighty, let's go to the next strategy. Ba-ba-da-bum. Yeah, so when you're unsure of the traditional solution, just rely on the question's context and logical reasoning. Kind of how I went through before, like identifying specific questions. This question is on commas. These are my comma rules. This question's on this. These are my rules. So, all right. My tip on guessing, and I've actually tested this out, so I think this definitely works, is picking an answer. Like if all there are a few cases of how to do this, like picking answer choices that one, before you start the test, like have your guessing letter and use that same letter for every question you guess on. And the best way to like do this is if those questions are like in order. So let's say I'm on the reading section and I'm only able to get through questions 1 through 39. So I have questions 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. I would just choose one letter and just guess, use that same letter all the way down. Don't guess arbitrarily. So don't do like C, A, D, C, B, D. That you'll actually get more questions wrong doing it that way. It's easier to get the question like get lucky and get the question right by being consistent. Alrighty, so I don't want to bombard too many guys with too many strategies, but just kind of want to get you guys a taste of some things you actually can apply to your own studying game. But the ACT, yes, it is a very important test, and I understand that there's a lot of pressure that rides on this test. So I personally have test anxiety. But the way to overcome that is to one, do a lot of practice and make sure you understand your mistakes. So another very important tip is yes, it's important to take a lot of practice tests to become familiar with the questions. But I'll also add that you want to make sure that you understand, like, okay, if you miss a question, like, why did you get that question wrong? Because that same type of question will come up again on your next test or on the official test. And you want to make sure you get it right, because if you get that question right, then that will increase your score. Okay. All right. So that concludes my top tips on the ACT. Well, I'll say majority of them. I have some more, but I think that's enough for right now. But anyway, yeah, this experience of like I've been a test prep tutor for, I started my senior year, my 12th grade year of high school, and was teaching ACT from that time frame to undergrad to grad school, and now I do it full time and founded Top Tutors For Us. And so the average student going through our program is increasing their ACT score by 7 composite points, 120 plus points for the SAT. And and I'll kind of go through a little bit more about our programming and what really makes us different. Okay, so I founded Top Tutors For Us because of this, these statistics that, being a Black student, like Black students in this country have the lowest test scores, and it's been consistently that way. And there was not a test prep platform that was addressing our needs. So I'm like, well, I want to fill that gap. And in 2023, the ACT actually reported that only 5% of Black students got above a 20. So they're missing out on hundreds of millions of dollars in college scholarships. and just so many higher education opportunities because of not having high test scores. And according to the National Bureau of Economic Research, when Black students have one or more Black teachers, their graduation rates increase by over 32%. And especially in this market, it's very hard to get connected with excellent Black teachers. So at Top Tutors, we make it easy. We give Black students are at a disadvantage, and we give them an advantage. Okay, at Top Tutors For Us. So, like, let's say we have a student, Sam, he's an 11th grader at Chicago Public Schools, aspires to attend college, plays on the JV basketball team, 17 on the ACT. He'll get paired with someone like Toby, who's a junior at WashU, engineering major, club basketball team, also share the passion for basketball, and did a 27 on the ACT. So, it's a culturally competent match. And yeah, and Sam has a personalized curriculum. Every student that comes through our program takes our proprietary assessment. And yeah, they get a culturally competent match. And we also have a proprietary platform where the student has daily homework assignments. So these are targeted and personalized homework assignments. Plus, I see a couple of students on this session. Every Saturday, the students know that they have practice tests that they take with us. So, and they get a comprehensive score report back. And this is actually a student that got up 6 composite points, and this was only actually 4 weeks of our program. So, and this student is now in, she went from a 19, her 11th grade year. She went down, like before Top Tutors, she went down 2 points, her 12th grade year to a 17. Okay. And then in April, she enrolled into our program, April of her senior year, and we got her up to a 23. So that was, she was feeling very discouraged. And so now with that, she has opportunities for up to an additional $50,000 in scholarships. And so on average, I think, I mentioned this information, and we recruit our top tutors from Harvard to Howard. Our tutors must have scored a 27 or higher on the ACT to be qualified, or a 1310 or higher on their SAT to be qualified. Plus, they must demonstrate past teaching and leadership experience to be eligible for our platform. And we currently have over 175 amazing tutors, amazing top tutors from across the country at these top institutions. And we are in 20 school districts and over 10 college-bound organizations. So I will go back to my original slides. All righty. Okay, so first we'll do questions, and then I will set up the raffle. But I also want to make sure everybody follows us on our socials. If you enjoyed this webinar, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. We are everywhere. And yeah, stay in touch with us. Subscribe to our newsletters. If you go to our website, you can subscribe to our newsletters where you'll get scholarships, information. So for those with questions, feel free to put in the chat box, and I'll be happy to answer them. While you all do that, I will set up the raffle. Okay, so I'm going to be putting in the names into the raffle. Let's see how I can do this. Okay. So let me share my screen. And I'm going to start typing y'all names. Okay, how can I do this? Okay, and I see some questions too. So we have Okay, so a few questions here. Is there a letter that is best to use for guessing? My favorite letter is A. There's really not a best letter, but I've always found the best luck with A. So, hello, how do I enroll in this program? Yeah, to enroll, go to our website. Let me also send you a link to actually, so you can book a Calendly call with our team. We offer free info sessions for parents. If you're interested, our team member will call you and give you more information about Top Tutors for Us, and also just give you some tips if your child has a low ACT score, or if your child has a high ACT score and wants to go up. Definitely book an info call with us, and we can give you guys a game plan and more information. So I'm going to drop that down in the chat, a link to schedule an info call with our team. And this is free, obviously. Okay. Yeah, in our program, it's based on the student's need. So if you're a student with like an 18 and you're trying to get to a 27, that's definitely doable. So you just need a little more time to prepare. And so we will recommend the best package for you. Where can you find the best practice test? That's a great question. Obviously, we have the best. I shouldn't say like that. You can find the best practice tests online. I'll also say that we have thousands of practice questions in our bank, our question bank, on our platform. So how do you get the best ones? You could, Google. I definitely do not recommend getting practice questions from ChatGPT. Only use ChatGPT if you are like trying to understand a concept. Do not use ChatGPT to generate ACT questions. They will the data it gives out is very horrible. So I think that's everyone in here. Okay. So question, what grade age do you recommend preparing for the ACT or SAT or using your program? Great question. So I recommend that you definitely want your child to start before the 11th grade. Like you want your child to get tested in 9th grade. That's my recommendation, because then you can see, all right, my child is at let's say a 15, and I want my child to go to this university. So at least you have a baseline of where they're starting and like how far they need to go to, hit their target score. I'll also mention, like, the earlier you start, the better. I definitely don't recommend I think there is like a lot going on. Most people think starting in 11th grade is best. I think that's a little bit too late, starting 11th grade in the spring semester, because what if your child tests for the ACT? Let's say they take their first ACT in 11th grade and they get like a 17, then they only have half a year to get their score up. Okay, so like you want to make sure you want to give your child the most time to prepare for this exam. So yeah, we actually have students in our program who are in the 7th grade preparing for the SAT. So take that. Alrighty, our winner is Brooklyn. Congrats. You received a free session with our top tutor. Great job. I will follow up with you with that certificate. Okay. Let me go back to the slides. Thank you all so much again for joining. We have a couple more minutes. Oh yeah, of course. Wait, hold on a second. Did I put in? Okay, wait. I see a Brooklyn single. Wait a second. It's a Brooklyn page. Okay. Brooklyn Singletary. Okay, you're the winner. Okay, let's make sure. It's a Brook. I saw Brooks. So I was like, okay, Brooklyn Singletary. Alrighty. Any questions before I end this Zoom? Thank you guys so much for joining and being such great participants. Please fill out our survey at the end and stay in touch with us. Follow us on all socials. Join our newsletters. Start early with the ACT. Start early with college. If your child is in the middle school, still like get them introduced to the ACT and the SAT. Have them take a practice test. Practice tests are free, so at least you know where your child is, scoring. So, and you can use that information however you like. So, alrighty. So if no one has any other questions, a survey will pop up at the end. So please fill that out to give me and my team feedback on how this webinar went. And hope to see you for our next webinar series, which is going to be in 2 weeks. And the topic is on, I should probably know this. I have to go back and look at my notes what the topic is going to be on in 2 weeks. I think it's on ACT strategy secrets most test prep companies don't teach. So I'll be going more in depth into teaching strategies for the ACT. So, all right. But anyway, thank you guys again and have a good evening.